What about you guys? How's it going? I hope you're all keeping well today. I hope everything is good where you are. Back again for some more photography basics. Did you enjoy the aperture video? I hope you did. If you haven't had a chance to check it out, do hit the link in the top right hand corner there. But if you did take the time to watch the video, thank you very much. Hope you have all been practicing as well in your depth of field type of shots. Not that I was setting any homework for you all to do while you were in lockdown. Or did I? So now we come to the next key aspect, is what builds up our overall exposure. There is three. We've covered the first one, which is aperture, and that's all about how much light we allow in through the lens. Now we come to our shutter speed, which is how long we allow this light to come into our camera and expose onto our sensor. So when you go and take a photograph, you press your shutter button up on the top and you would feel your camera do a little clunk and you would hear this type of noise. All that clunky noise is your shutter door opening and closing, so you can have this open for a long period of time or a short period of time. There gives you the answer already as to what shutter speed is measured in time. Or we can say that we have a fast shutter speed and a slow shutter speed depending on what sort of shutters that we tend to set for ourselves. So much like the aperture priority, what I want you to do now is on your camera is turn it to S or TV. So this is your shutter speed priority or time values listed as on a Canon. With shutter speed priority, you're in control of the camera's shutter, whereas the aperture and the ISO are all set automatically to correspond as to what shutter you have set. If we have a look in our camera on the back, you can see there's like a little number on the bottom left of my camera, and as I turn my wheel to the right, I'm actually doing a fast shutter speed. So you can see the fastest I can go to is 8,000th of a second. But if I turn it to the left, I'm slowing down my shutter. So you can see the numbers are starting to get smaller and there's like little quotation marks that start to appear. Now we're into slow shutter speeds. So like I say, those little quotation marks are just an indication of full seconds. So you can see that the slowest shutter speed that I could go down to was 30 with the quotation marks. So my shutter is going to open for 30 seconds, quite a long period of time. Whereas the fastest shutter I was able to set for myself was 8,000th of a second. Now some cameras might list this a little bit differently. My camera has a 1/8000. Your camera might have that, or my camera might just show the 8,000 as a block number. Either way, this is an indication of 1/8000. So what does that actually look like inside our camera? Well, let's have a look at different shutter speeds with the little Praktica film camera. I've got this set up and I'm just going to change between some shutter speeds here. So on the little film camera, I have a shutter speed dial that I'm going to change to 1,000th of a second, which is the fastest shutter I can go to on this camera. So I set it up on there and I go and take a photograph. Now you can see that the shutter opened and closed. Not a very long period of time, but you know, it was one of those blink and you'll miss it sort of scenarios. It's very, very, very fast. Now you can imagine what 8,000th of a second would probably look like on the Sony as well. So let's start to slow things down a little bit. I'm going to turn my shutter speed to 125th of a second, which is 1/125. And let's see what the shutter door looks like with this type of shutter. So I'm going to turn my shutter speed dial, I'm going to take a shot. Now, you can still see that the shutter was still opening and closing quite quickly, but you were actually able to see it open and close. So we have a much more shorter period of time compared to the 1,000th of a second. There's a bit more time for that light to come into the camera. Let's go slower. So I'm going to turn my shutter speed dial on the Praktica to 1/4 of a second, so 1/4. And as I turn my shutter to that, and I go take my photograph, shutter was open for a little bit more of a longer period of time compared to the others, so it was letting in more light that way. Whereas if I now start to go to the slowest shutter that I can go to on this camera, which is 1 second, so that might be listed on your camera as 1 with the quotation marks, so my shutter is going to remain open for a full second. Let's have a look and see what that looks like. So as I turn my shutter speed to 1 second and I go take my shot, and you can now start to see that my shutter was open for a much longer period of time, stayed open and then closed over. So even though the Praktica can open for 1 second, my Sony camera can open for a full 30 seconds, which is quite a long period of time for this light to come in. There is some things that you need to consider when it comes to playing about with different shutter speeds, and the one thing that you want to sit and think about is steadiness of your shot. You ever sat and looked at your photograph and you thought, oh, it looks really good, but when you look a lot closer, there's a wee bit of shakiness going on here, or you've maybe gone out and taken a nighttime photograph and you've held the camera and it just looks all wishy-washy. Well, all that is with the longer shutter speeds, is that because the shutter's open for a longer period of time, it's recording all that light, but it's also recording all your movement as well. Whereas with the faster shutter speeds, you're not really going to get that because it's a lot faster, much more quicker period of time. It's not going to recognize all the shakiness going on. So when you're using a slow shutter speed or a long exposure, you would use what's known as a tripod, those three-legged things that you would see that you can set your camera up on top of, and it'll keep everything nice and steady. I would also recommend maybe getting a remote control, or use your camera's built-in timer, like a 2-second or a 10-second timer, so that way you get a much more steadier shot, because sometimes if you press the shutter button, you get a little jolt with the camera on the slower shutters. So now you're probably asking yourself, well, what's the minimum shutter speed that I can go to that, you know, I don't need a tripod, but I can still take a shot, get something nice and steady as well? Well, this can all be lens dependent. You want your minimum shutter speed to be that of your focal length. And what I mean by that is, so say for example you have your standard kit lens that you get with your camera, like an 18-55 or something like that, you would maybe want your minimum shutter speed to be at least a 60th of a second, so that's 1/60. Anything slower than that, you're going to start noticing the shake going on in your photograph. Of course, anything faster than that, you're not really going to notice it. Whereas if you have, say, a much more bigger, heavier lens, like a 70-200mm, those things are generally quite heavy lenses, so they will notice the shake a bit more. You maybe want to make your shutter a lot faster, so a 70-200, you want your minimum shutter to be at least 1/200th of a second. For me personally, I like to find a little bit of a happy medium when it comes to my minimum shutter speed. I like to mostly keep my shutter at 1/125, so 125th of a second. I can go slower if I want to, and I know that I'll still maybe get a steady enough shot. I can maybe go down to the 60th of a second if I want to, but I don't. I have a nice happy medium for me that if I want to go faster, I can do. If I want to go slower, I can. But I know that if I go past the 125th of a second, then I'm probably going to need to start thinking about things like tripods. So where we've talked about the technical side of things, the shutter speed, now we're going to come to the creative side, and this is where the fun really starts to begin with the shutter speed, is that you can use this for such a wide variety of different stylish shots. Like a fast shutter speed, you would use that for more like sports and wildlife photography, where you can freeze your subject that could be running or could be flying, or like a car driving past remains nice and still. Whereas your slower shutter speeds, on the other hand, you would tend to use that more for the likes of nighttime photography. If you're out in a town or a city and you want to get all these lights that are on, you can get some really nice effects with them. Or you ever stood over on a bridge of a motorway or anything, and you've got the cars driving past and their headlights are on, but you see this like painted with light effect? Well, that's all that is. It's just a slow shutter speed going on with this type of shot. So I've of course been showing you some photo examples as we go along here, but I just wanted to show you a little practical here that I set up with a singular light source with different shutter speeds just here in my living room. It's a way that I can do a little thing that's known as painting with light. So as I have set up my singular light source, I'm just constantly spinning it around, but I'm taking this shots with different shutter speeds. Now I've set my camera up. It has a nifty little feature where not only will it do a timer, it'll also take 3 or 4 or 5 shots after that timer has set. Not all cameras maybe might have that, mind you. If it does, great. If it doesn't, don't worry about it. Each shutter speed that I'm showing here has 3 photographs just to show me moving this singular light. So as we look here, so I started off with 1,000th of a second. You can see the shot is quite dark. You can't really see me, thank goodness. But as I spin my light around, you can see that it does show that I am spinning this light, but the box and everything is all frozen. There's not a lot of swooshing going around. It's kept everything nice and frozen. But if I slowed my shutter speed down, I went to 125th of a second. So to brighten up my photograph here, I'm still keeping nice and still, but there is a slight swoosh going on with the light as I spin it around. Now look what happens when I go down to 1/4 of a second. Now we start to get a lot more cooler type of shot here. You start to get this swoosh effect. Because my shutter is open for a longer period of time, it's had a bit more time to record all this light as I spin it around to then where I get to 1 second and I'm constantly spinning, and now I have a full circle of light. So with this painting of light style, maybe you can achieve like different shapes and letters, or I've seen people do stickmen with the painting with light, and it's good fun. But it's a good sort of practice to sort of try out with different shutter speeds and see what a difference your 1,000th of a second went to 1 second as well, how much more light I was able to record into that sort of style of shot. So let's have a quick recap, guys. So shutter speed was all about how long we allow this light to come into our camera and expose onto our sensor. It can be for a long period of time or for a short period of time, or a fast shutter speed or a slow shutter speed, and it's all measured within time. The best setting that we can use on our camera to control our shutter speed is shutter speed priority, which is listed as S or TV on your camera. And just remember, you can use a fast shutter speed that has anything to do with movement if you want to freeze it, like a sports or wildlife, or you can use a slow shutter speed if you want to draw things out a little bit more, like say it's a nighttime type of shot, or you want to do this painting with light that we experimented here in this video. But of course, it's all about experimentation. Do give this here a try. I hope this video was helpful for you. Let me know in the comments down below, what do you think? Do like, share, and press that wee subscribe button so that you can stay up to date with future videos. Again, we only have one more thing to talk about with our overall exposure. We're going to talk about that in the next couple of days as well. But until then, guys, take care and enjoy the rest of your day.